Welcome to Getting Started with Programming. My name is Dr. Califf. In this video, I'd like to talk about variables in Java, what they are, and how we use them. You're probably familiar with the concept of variables from algebra, but that concept is a bit different from what we mean by variables in programming. So what are programming variables? Well, they're containers. I like to think of them as boxes. We use them to store values like numbers, letters, more complex things made up of letters or numbers like a name. The container will have a name. Let's suppose that this particular variable is for keeping track of a basketball score. It's named score and currently has the value 44. Suppose someone makes a basket and we need to add 2 to the score. Note that our program code will be exactly the same no matter what the current score is, because it will just use the score variable. The program will take the value that is currently stored in the variable, add 2 to that value, and then store it back into score. So now the score variable holds 46. Obviously, your computer doesn't hold data in a bunch of boxes. Variables are actually labels for pieces of the computer's memory. So we might picture that like this. Here we have 3 different variables set up. If we want to know how many lives a player has left, we'll go to the numLives variable and see that there are 3. If we want to see the grade on an assignment, we'll look at the contents of the grade variable and see that it's an A. When the player dies, we'll get the value out of the numLives variable, subtract 1 from it, and then store that result back into the variable. That will change what is stored in memory at that location. Variables are important to us because they allow us to keep track of data that is changing, and because they allow the program to do different things on different runs. The next thing we need to know about variables is that they need to have types. The type of a variable tells us what kind of data is stored in each variable. In this case, numLives is an integer, a whole number. Height is something we call a floating point number because it has a decimal point in it. And grade is a character. It's important that we know what type each variable is, because inside the computer, each value is really just a string of ones and zeros. If the value in height were interpreted as an integer, it would be over 1 billion. We can only know that grade is an A instead of 65 because we know it's supposed to be a character. In Java, before we can use a variable, we have to declare it, which tells the computer what kind of data the variable is allowed to hold, which then tells it how to interpret the data stored in the variable when we use it. In a variable declaration, we specify the type of the variable, the kind of data it holds, and the name of the variable. We may also choose to give the variable an initial value, but that's not required. Here's the format for a variable declaration: the type, then the name, then a semicolon. We can declare multiple variables of the same type at once by separating the names of the variables with commas. We can also give the variable an initial value by adding the equal sign and the value before the semicolon. Here are some examples of different variable declarations. The first sets up a variable named middle initial that holds a single character. You can read that type as either char, short for character, or char, because it looks like char. Both are considered correct. The next is an integer named numInt. You can see that we abbreviate integer int for Java. We also have a floating point number for a GPA. You'll learn more about what floating point numbers are in the next video, but for right now, think of it as a real number. Then we have an integer numLives that's initialized to 3, and a character grade that is initialized to B. Now, variables aren't very interesting unless we can put new values in them. The way we do that is with the assignment operator, which we write using the equal sign in Java. It's called the assignment operator because it assigns a value to a variable. When we see this operator symbol, it's very natural to call it equals, because that's how we have read that symbol for many years. However, reading it that way can cause confusion and definitely makes you say things that don't make sense. Think about what this means. Score equals score plus 2. That's an impossibility. So I would encourage you to avoid using equals. Instead, use something like score is assigned score plus 2, or score gets score plus 2. That will help you remember that this isn't a comparison, it's an action. It will also help you remember that direction matters. We're going to compute the value on the right and then put that value into the location on the left. Now that we know what variables are, how to declare them, and how to put values into them, in the next video you'll learn about some of the different types variables can have in Java and see examples of them in some simple programs. Thanks for watching.